After reading about the Supreme Court cases and thinking about what topics interest me, I chose to do my paper on discrimination in the workplace, schools, and more. The thesis statement of my paper is, however, despite the progress against it, discrimination has remained a concern in the workplace, in schools, and more. Some of the types of discrimination that I discuss in my paper are gender discrimination in two ways: women not being given the same opportunity as men, and people being treated differently because of the way they identify their gender. This specific topic seems to become more of a concern recently. Racial discrimination, people being treated differently based on their race, and age discrimination, people being treated differently based on their age. The amendments that discrimination violates are the 5th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution. The 5th Amendment protects the rights of a person suspected of a crime and states that they are entitled to due process of law. The 14th Amendment states born or naturalized citizens are entitled to due process of law and equal protections of the laws. My inspiration for the topic came from reading about court cases, but also from experience. From what I've experienced, seen, and heard, I felt that discrimination in general is relevant because people experience it every day. It's relatable because it's happening to people. It's evolving. For example, things like gender fluidity weren't as well known even 5 or 10 years ago as they are today. And it's emotional. People have personal feelings and connections about discrimination. Some interesting information I've gathered from my research is that more companies now have women in upper leadership positions than ever before. For example, the Disneyland Resort has Chris Tyler as Vice President of Disneyland Park, and General Motors has Mary T. Barra as their CEO. Another piece of interesting information I found is that in 2011, there were 1.6 million women who worked for Walmart who made complaints about discriminatory pay and promotion practices, and voiced concerns about a culture where gender discrimination was accepted. So even though we see more women in leadership positions now, that doesn't mean that the concern of gender discrimination has been fully eliminated. The same can be said for other types of discrimination. For example, Barack Obama was President of the United States, the first African American president, but that doesn't mean that the concern of racial discrimination has been fully eliminated either. I've made decent progress on my paper so far. Going forward, I need to work on completing my works cited page, as well as adding more information to make my argument stronger. I feel like there are certain parts of my argument that are very strong and others that aren't so much so. So going forward, I'm going to be looking for more information to make those parts stronger, and then I'll go back and proofread the paper to make sure that it's as strong as it can be. I had a few options of sources to choose for the source evaluation. The first one I chose is titled, "Are Female CEOs and Chairwomen More Conservative and Risk-Averse? Evidence from the Banking Industry During the Financial Crisis." It was published by Springer, a credible company, and its authors are AJ Palvia, Amelia Vahama, and Sammy Vahama. These authors are experts in their field of economics and are very credible. The Journal of Business Ethics published this article, and that's also a credible journal. This article is filled with data and studies which are strengths, but its weakness is that they only looked at the financial industry, so it's a little narrow. But I'll still use this paper for my argument. Even though they're saying it's good to have female leaders, they're still being discriminatory by saying that women as a whole are conservative and less likely to take risks. The second source I chose is titled Occupational Segregation and the Career Mobility of White Men and Women, published by the Oxford Journals, a credible source, and its author is David J. Maum Jr. He's an expert in his field of sociology, has a PhD in sociology, and has lots of other works on the topic of discrimination. The strengths of this source are that it has a lot of data that's well integrated to make good points, and it's well written. The weakness of this source is that it's slightly outdated, being from its 1999, but the points are still valuable and relevant, so I will use them in my argument. Al Sharpton said it well when he said, "As I often say, we have come a long way from slavery, but in 2014, discrimination and inequality still saturate our society in modern ways. Though racism may be less blatant now, in many cases, its existence is undeniable. Society has come a long way, but discrimination is still a concern in the workplace, in schools, and more."